Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Gopi Jana Vallabha Girivaradhari Jaya Gopi Jana Vallabha Girivaradhari Yasodanandana Prajajana Ranjanam Yasodanandana Prajajana Ranjanam Yamunatira Vanachari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Gopi Jana Vallabha Girivaradhari Yasodanandana Prajajana Ranjana Yasodanandana Prajajana Ranjana Yamunatira Vanachari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Gopi Jana Vallabha Girivaradhari Yasodanandana Prajajana Ranjana Yamunatira Vanachari Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare 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 Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Srila Prabhupada ki jai. Srimad Bhagavatam ki jai. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to the assembled devotees. Shokishori ki jai. Jagannath Baladev Subhadra Marani ki jai. Gaunitai ki jai. So today we are continuing with Canto 10, Chapter 21, and the text for today is text 6. So we can chant responsibly. Iti Venuravam Rajan Sarvabhuta Manoharan Shrutva Vraja Striya Sarva Vanayantyo Birbire Iti Venuravam Raja Sarvabhuta Manoharam Shrutva Vraja Striya Sarva Vanayantyo Birbire Iti Venuravam Rajan Sarvabhuta Manoharam Shrutva Vraja Striya Sarva Varmayantyo Birbire Iti Venurayam Rajan Sarvabhuta Manoharam Shrutva Vraja Striya Sarva Vanayantyo Birbire. Please chant. Iti Venuravam Rajan Sarvabhuta Manoharan Shrutva Vraja Striya Sarva Vanayantyo Birbire Iti Venuravam Rajan Sarvabhuta Manoharan Shrutva Vraja Striya Sarva Vanayantyo Birbire. And the word for word, iti, thus, Venu, Ravam, the vibration of the flute. Rajan, O King Parikshit, Sarvabhuta, of all living beings. Manaharam, stealing the minds. Shrutva, hearing. Vrajastriya, the ladies standing in the village of Vraja. Sarva, all of them. Vanayansyaha, engaged in describing. Abirbire, embraced one another. So the translation and the purport by the disciples of Srila Prabhupada is as follows. Translation. O King, when the young ladies in Braja heard the sound of Krishna's flute, which captivates the minds of all living beings, they all embraced one another and began describing it. Purport. The word iti here indicates that after becoming speechless by remembering Krishna, the cowherd damsels then regained their composure and were thus able to ecstatically describe the sound of Krishna's flute. As a few gopis began to exclaim, and the other gopis realized that they shared the same ecstatic love within their hearts, all of them started embracing one another, overwhelmed with conjugal love for young Krishna. Om Jnanatimrandasya Gyananjana Shlakaya Chakshurinmilitam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha Shri Chaitanya Manopistam Stapitam Yena Bhutale Svayam Rupa Kadamayam Dadati Svapadantikam Vandeham Shri Guru Shri Uttapadakamalam Shri Guru Vaishnavamscha Shri Rupam Sagrajatam Sahagana Raghunatham Vitam Sajivam Sadvaitam Savadutam Parijana Saitam Krishna Chaitanya Devam Shri Radha Krishna Padasa Gana Lalita Shri Vishakha Vitamscha. Hey Krishna Karuna Sindhu Dina Bandho Jagatpate Gopesha Gopika Kanta Radha Kanta Namostate Tapta Kanchana Gorangi Radha Vrindavan Ishwari Rishabhanu Sute Devi Pranamami Hari Priye Vanchakalpataribhyas Chakripa Sindhubhye Vachapatitanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnebhyo Namo Namaha Namo Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prasthaya Bhutale Srimati Romapada Swami iti namine Namo Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prasthaya Bhutale Srimati Bhaktivedanta Swami iti namine. Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shivasadi Gaura Bhakta Vrinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare. So the translation. O King, when the young ladies in Braja heard the sound of Krishna's flute, which captivates the minds of all living beings, they all embraced one another and began describing it. So, Srila Sukadeva Goswami, and this is coming from Srila Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur, here he begins the description of Krishna's pastimes according to the intense mood of the love of the gopis. So this is the beginning of everything that's coming. So Srila Sukadeva Goswami is doing this for a particular reason, and that is that the gopis were unable to speak. So it's almost that he's their mouthpiece. And we hear that they heard the sound of Krishna's flute and that they all embraced one another, the flute having captivated their minds. So here the purport highlights that they became speechless by remembering Krishna. So these gopis, they're in a relationship with the Lord, which is in a particular transcendental mellow, and that's of conjugal love, or seeing their relationship with Krishna as being of a matrimonial nature. So akin to being husband and wife. So that's how they're viewing Krishna. That's the transcendental mellow in which they're functioning. So these particular devotees of Lord Krishna, they are ever liberated persons. Means that they're as liberated as Lord Krishna is. So they're actually eternally perfect devotees. And as such, they've achieved this eternal blissful life. It's exactly on the level of Lord Krishna. And so they refer to as the Nitya Siddhas. And of course, we can contrast these devotees, these eternally liberated devotees, with the eternally conditioned entities whose lives are being controlled in different ways by actually the significant feature of their lives is they're forgetful of that connection and relationship with Lord Krishna. So you get those two contrasting, I mean, it's a kind of graphic contrast, but it's necessary, and I'll try and tie it up as we proceed through this presentation. Now, the remembrance, I need it a little bit lower. Okay. The remembrance of Krishna by the gopis, upon hearing his flute, is remembrance that stimulates ecstatic love in that connubial mood that they're having. So the flute is a stimulant for such remembrance and their ecstatic love, in the same way that there's other aspects of Krishna that act as stimulants for ecstatic love. So these are as follows. And I mean, one can just think of the deities and it makes perfect sense. His smiling, his apparel, his garland, his buffalo horn, his leg bells, his conch shell, his footprints. We may not be seeing his footprints here, but his footprints, his places of pastime, such as Vrindavan, his favorite plant, Tulsi, his devotees, and the periodic occasions on which one remembers him, for example, Ekadasi. These all act as stimulants for remembrance of Krishna, and hence ecstatic love, as do too his uncommon activities and his transcendental qualities. So with regard to his transcendental qualities that are supposed to act as stimulants for ecstatic love and for remembrance of him, these refer to qualities that pertain to his transcendental body, qualities that pertain to his transcendental speech, and to qualities that pertain to his transcendental mind. So this is the breakdown that's given in Nectar of Devotion for transcendental qualities of Lord Krishna. You have to look at all those three aspects. So even though there's a distinction that's made between Krishna's body and Krishna's qualities that stimulate this ecstatic love, they're analyzed separately as causes of that love. And the reason that there's a difference between Krishna person and qualities is that devotees view the qualities as stimulants for ecstatic love, so they're always analyzed separately. Now, the reason there's a difference between Krishna and his body is that, or rather, the reason there's no difference between Krishna and his body, even though the analysis makes that distinction, is that he's unborn and that his transcendental body never deteriorates. And he puts it this way himself. He says in Bhagavad Gita 4:6, I still appear in every millennium in my original transcendental form. So it means that Krishna says that he appears in his own body, meaning that he doesn't change bodies. It's the same body, which is quite different from the case with the common living entities. Now, the stimulant for ecstatic love, that was the vibration of the flute, was such that it had a particular characteristic. And this is the characteristic that's given. It could break the meditation of the greatest sage. So Nectar version gives this as the particular characteristic of Krishna's flute. Now, this is interesting because the meditation of the gopis, being in that connubial relationship with Krishna, is in fact a meditation on Krishna blowing his flute. So see the difference. Very interesting. And their meditation is on all the cowherd boys singing of the glories of Krishna. Now, this understanding of what the gopis are actually meditating on is described by Srila Sukadeva Goswami to Maharaj Parikshit, and it was just prior to this verse where he says, "My dear king, I shall try to describe how the gopis become absorbed in thought of Krishna." The gopis, this is their meditation. They would meditate on Krishna dressing himself, just like a dancing actor, and entering the forest of Vrindavan, marking the ground with his footprints. They meditated upon Krishna having a helmet with a peacock feather and wearing earrings on his ears and yellow, gold-colored garments covered with jewels and pearls. And here to support that is the previous verse, and I'm quoting from the previous verse. So this is the meditation of the gopis. This is what they're meditating on, exactly this. Wearing a peacock feather ornament upon his head, blue karnikara flowers on his ears, a yellow garment as brilliant as gold, and the Vajrayanti garland. So that's the gopis' meditation. Now, Lord Krishna exhibited his transcendental form as the greatest of dancers as he entered the forest of Vrindavan, beautifying it with the marks of his footprints. This is all the previous verse. He filled the holes of the flute with the nectar of his lips, and the cowherd boys sing his glories. So exactly this previous verse is actually the meditation of the gopis. So that was Srimad Bhagavatam 10:21:5. Now, of the three groups of transcendental qualities, so those pertaining to the transcendental body of Krishna, those pertaining to the transcendental speech of Lord Krishna, and those qualities pertaining to his transcendental mind, here is the meditation on the qualities related to his transcendental body. This is what we've just heard. They're meditating on the qualities related to his transcendental body. So you can see that even though there isn't a distinction between Krishna and his body, for the purpose of analysis of what the gopis' meditation is, one looks at those transcendental qualities. It's very specific, the qualities related to his body. Now, the impetus to love Krishna isn't distinct from himself. And in fact, he is he's the place where all transcendental pleasure is collected. So this is often we hear of reservoirs of water. So Krishna is referred to as a reservoir because he's the place where all transcendental pleasure is collected. So Srila Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur, and this is coming from Sarata Darshini, he comments in terms of the gopis' meditation. So these are some of his comments. I've described what the gopis are meditating on constantly. So Srila Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur points out that Karnikara is singular, whereas Karnayor, ears, is the dual form. So this indicates that sometimes Krishna wore one Karnikara flower on the left ear and sometimes on the right ear. And the reason for doing this, for wearing the flower, was to actually enhance the intoxicating effect of his youthfulness. So Krishna's beautiful body, it's described this way, it looked like the best of dancers. I recall many years ago, I was in Mumbai and I'd come there for an Ayurvedic treatment, and there was a devotee who asked me to do a particular service. And that was, there was a dancer who needed to be photographed. So I recall doing a whole series of photographs, one sitting where the dancer would move between the different poses. Sometimes he'd be Lord Shiva, or sometimes he'd go into this pose, that pose. I didn't know all the dance poses, but in editing the photographs afterwards, I realized that actually the extreme gracefulness and the lines of the body were extraordinary, that almost every picture was perfect because there's such control of the body. So the garment always flowed beautifully with the lines of the body. So Krishna is doing that. He's actually compared to being dressing like the best of dancers, means that always everything flows in a beautiful line. So in the same way those flowers are there enhancing, it's a very intoxicating effect. And yesterday, that was some of the words that were in yesterday's verse that refer to this comparison of him being the best of dancers, Nata Vara Vapi. And Srila Vishwanath Chakravarti, he continues, because he's analyzing this meditation of the gopis. He says that Krishna purposefully dressed in an artful way to display his youthful charms in order to incite the romantic desires of the gopis. And indeed, this is actually the Kaishore age of Lord Krishna, meaning the beginning of his 11th year. So it's sort of like the beginning of teenage years. I teach a class here in the temple on Sundays to the 11 and 12-year-olds, and there's a huge transition from being 10 to 11 years. When the children become 11 years, you can see that they've suddenly become more graceful, they've become more aware of their appearance, they even address each other with some sort of new respectfulness. It's a very different mood. So this is the time of Krishna dressing like this. It's the Kaishore age. It's the beginning of his 11th year. And Srila Rupa Goswami, Nectar of Devotion, he describes that at this time the luster of his body becomes so bright that it becomes an impetus for ecstatic love. So even the body is exuding a beautiful luster. And in a similar way, there's a reddish border around his eyes. And there's also a growth of very fine hair, a very soft hair that's becoming visible on his body. So this is the change that's come about with Krishna entering this Kaishore age. And Nectar of Devotion gives a description of how he's viewed by one of the gopis. So this is recorded in Srila Rupa Goswami's Nectar of Devotion. So there's a gopi, Kundalata, who says, "My dear friend, I have just seen an extraordinary beauty appearing in the person of Krishna. His blackish bodily hue appears just like the Indranila jewel. There are reddish signs on his eyes, and small soft hairs are coming out on his body. The appearance of these symptoms has made him extraordinarily beautiful. So this is a view of one of the gopis with this change in Krishna's appearance. And of course, his very deliberate enhancement of the change in his appearance. And I mean, this is very natural. When you think about any teenager, you become aware that suddenly they're accumulating all sorts of cosmetics and they're paying extra attention to their wardrobe. I mean, I heard one parent describing to me that their child was now researching very carefully how suits were cut, because I guess he had to wear suits. And that same child I have seen in the result of the research, and they're these very brilliant colors, very noticeable colors, strong mauves and strong corals. So this is part of what happens in this teenage year, that there's extra attention given to physical appearance because of the need to attract. So this is very similar to what's happening with Krishna, but his body, of course, is transcendental, and there's a beautiful luster that's also present. Now, the exhibition of the mood of transcendental love in this conjugal or connubial mood, it takes place through particular movements of the body. So there's glancing, there's moving the eyebrows, there's speaking very soft words, and there's an exchange of smiles. And right here, what we're reading is something of this mood as it takes place as the gopis become aware of each other having that mood. And what they do is they embrace one another because they realize that they're all sharing the same connubial mood for young Krishna. Now, at the same time, there's the symptom of ecstatic love that's caused by remembering Krishna. So the gopis might have criticized the flute for having holes in it. So this was their criticism of the flute. There's holes in this piece of bamboo. And for this reason, Krishna filled the holes with the nectar of his lips. That's the reason. So, yeah, I'm going to bring up something I can't resist because I'm conducting a lot of discussion classes with 11 and 12-year-olds. And what often happens is that whatever's, very uppermost in the mind somehow gets interwoven into the philosophical discussion. So one young devotee currently is always bringing up whatever she's discussing, some example comes there of punching someone somehow or other. So another class member will say to her, why is it that you actually always bringing up this example of punching someone? And she'll respond, well, she doesn't like anybody in her school. So there's a new awareness that starts being present there. And there's much more interest in what are the thoughts and feelings of members of the opposite sex, whereas before it was, the boys kind of stayed together, the girls stayed together, and not much interest. So now there's, much more awareness and of a different thought process. And there's a lot of inquiry about that also goes on in the philosophical discussion. So here I'm noticing, I'm bringing that up because Krishna is responding to the criticism of the gopis of his flute. And now, Srila Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur, he says that although the flute is non-living, the touch of the nectar of Krishna's lips brought it to life and empowered it to madden the three worlds. So as a side note, and this is you'll find in Nectar of Devotion, there's actually three kinds of flutes that Krishna uses. There's a very small one, which is called the Venu, which is about 6 inches long. So yesterday we heard in the class that somebody makes many flutes. So there's a small one, there's 6 inches long. There's one that's called the Murali, which is 18 inches long. And this one has 4 holes on its body. And in fact, this particular 18-inch long flute, it produces a particularly enchanting sound. And the third kind of flute that Krishna has is called a Vamsi flute, which is about 15 inches long. So Krishna, or Kishore, he's often has the 18-inch long one, it seems. So that's the one that has the most enchanting sound. And the 15-inch flute, even though it's shorter, it has more holes on its body. It has 9 holes in its body. There's also a description that the Vamsi, the very short one that's 6 inches long, there's also a longer version of it. And that longer version has a name, the Mahananda. And this same short flute, the Venu, it also has an even longer version called the Darshini, or an even longer version called the Anandini. And in particular, it's the Anandini flute, which is very pleasing to the cowherd boys. So this is a breakdown in Nectar of Devotion, since this verse is dealing a lot with the gopis hearing the flute. And in this case, the flute is made of bamboo. We hear that because the gopis have gone into their criticism of this bamboo flute having holes and its relation to its relatives, etc. But actually, the flute can also be made of marble or of jewels. So the implication is that and this is all from Srila Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur, is that the flute's vibration makes itself successful. It accomplishes its purpose because it's been treated as an animate object, because it's conquering the gopis of Raja with Cupid through exhibiting its powers. So, it's an animate object. It's actually got some powers. It's using its powers through this nectar that's been poured into it by Krishna, and those powers achieve its purpose by enchanting the gopis. Now, what is the sound that actually Krishna is producing from the flute that the gopis are? They're just meditating on his blowing the flute. Now, the actual sound, and they've just heard the sound. This sound that he's playing is a slow raga. It's called the Malavarshi, which is actually fit for the autumn season. And Srila Kavi Karnapuram, he describes that, and I'm going to read his description, because we're hearing that the gopis are meditating on Krishna blowing the flute. We've got some insight into the flute. And now it's a description of Krishna's activity of blowing the flute. So this is Srila Kavi Karnapura. Krishna's lips, red as bimba fruits, drank the nectar of his flute, as his fingers danced deftly over its holes. The abundant flow of nectar emanating from the holes of the flute spread throughout the atmosphere. Besides the intended raga of Malavashi, the flute seemed to produce a variety of personified tunes. Receiving a kiss from Krishna's dazzling, smiling face, the flute enjoyed the same fortune as his charming lovers. So that's something of the interaction between Krishna and his flute. So it's seen that the flute is filled with nectar and Krishna's pouring nectar into it. And even though it's one particular raga he's playing, it still seems that there's some special personal notes that are coming out of the flute itself. So this particular flute, the Murali, is in fact considered to be faultless. It's devoid of any fault, even though it's full of holes. Because remember, that was a criticism of the gopis. And this is why it doesn't have fault, and this is Srila Kavi Kannapura. He puts it this way: it is astonishing that the hard flute softens the hearts of heartless people and silences the deer, birds, and other forest animals. Though derived from bamboo, vamsa, or a good family, the word vamsa is also used for good family, like the Chandra Vamsa dynasty, it infects all chaste women with intense attachment to Madhupati. So there's two reasons given for why the gopis' criticism doesn't hold. So the flute may be full of holes, but it actually doesn't have any faults. And the reasons given for it being faultless is that it softens the heart of all heartless people, and it allows for intense attachment on the part of the chaste gopis, intense attachment for Madhupati or Lord Krishna. And this is Srila Kavi Kannapura talking. He says, "Aho, just see this Murali of Murari." So this is a glorification of the flute. Although hollow, it holds a stream of ragas. It is formed from one section, the parva of a tree, but it initiates hundreds of festivals, the parvani. The sweet sound of the Murali simultaneously stuns the whole universe and fills everyone with joy. Entering within the ears, the vibration of Murari's flute again agitates one's body, mind, and senses. So this is a glorification of the flute by Srila Kavi Kannapura. It actually brings about so many festivals. Now, in terms of the gopis, even though there was an unlimited number of gopis, they all had the same good fortune. And the particular good fortune that they all shared was that they'd achieved this higher stage of love for Krishna. So, as was mentioned earlier, these are completely liberated entities. The gopis had peaceful natures, and they had the same object of meditation. They're recognizing the similarity amongst themselves, so this is what's similar amongst themselves. They all had peaceful natures, and they had the same object of meditation, namely this desire to attain Krishna. In fact, all of them were praying only for Krishna's supreme friendship, and they came to recognize that in each other. That's what this verse is saying. So with great yearning, they're looking in the direction of the flute. and they're embracing each other due to this is Srila Kavikana Purna, the sudden derangement of their minds. Because remember, that's what the flute achieves. It infects all chaste women with intense attachment to Lord Krishna. So this is a sudden derangement of their minds. And Srila Kavikana Purna says that they were overwhelmed with ecstasy. So hence they uttered some sweet words to describe the transcendental qualities of Krishna. And we're going to come to hear what all those words are in the upcoming verses. But I'm particularly focusing on this verse and the flute, the criticism of the gopis of the flute, their particular recognition of the similarity amongst each other. And there's a very nice prayer, particularly relevant to this verse, that Srila Sanatana Goswami says. So he offers obeisances to all these extraordinary moments in the pastimes of Lord Krishna and the gopis. So in this particular moment, this is the prayer that Srila Sanatana Goswami gives. I bow to you, a creator of crooked glances, enchanting in your three-bending form. As your flute bewildered the universe, the young gopis boldly sing your glories. So this is the particular obeisance that Srila Sanatana Goswami offers. Because this is the age at which there was one particular change that happened, this Kaishore age. Krishna would stand with his legs, his waist, and his neck bent in a delightful way. This is from Sri Krishna Leela Stava. So this is another significant change of something of the particular artful way in which Krishna starts presenting himself, that his body starts bending in a very artful way. Now, going back to the distinction that's made in Nectar of Devotion between these eternally perfect beings and beings who are completely absorbed in their relationship with Krishna and those that are completely oblivious of their relationship with Lord Krishna. You could call the two categories of persons the infallible and the fallible category. So in this material world, every living being is considered to be fallible. And in the spiritual world, every living being is considered to be infallible. This is from Bhagavad Gita 15:17. I'll just read that. Tvavimao purusho loke ksharas chakshara evacha shara sarvani bhutani kutosto shara uchyate. So there's been a description through speaking this morning of the spiritual world and the gopis. They're all existing in a kind of oneness with the Supreme Personality of God. It's so absorbed are they in their relationship with Him. And that's the reason they're called infallible. There's no disunity with Krishna and His whole creation. Whereas the fallible beings, those that are in contact with this material, physical world, their bodies are destructible and they're changing in contact with matter, meaning, you're seeing there's growth, they're lasting for some time, they're reproducing, they're dwindling, and then they're dying. So this change, this fallibility, it's all due to the fact that they're not in that mood of oneness in their relationship with Lord Krishna and His creation. So That's a note I'm ending off on in this particular analysis of today's verse. If there's any thought on the subject matter, of course, I was reading a lot from our acharyas and their embellishments, but if there's some thought that has come, please contribute.
Working now, yeah. You were describing the categories of stimulants, and I thought I saw in Nectar Devotion that objects are considered stimulants, like the flute, but that wasn't, in the categorization that you mentioned. I think that was included as part of the body or the things related to the body. So the flute is considered in that category. But I thought for sure I saw that there was, in the, maybe I'm wrong. But.
Yeah, the listing that's given was this one. In the same way, the flute is a stimulant for remembrance and sense of ecstatic love. In the same way that these are the ones that are listed. Krishna's smiling, his apparel, his garlands, his buffalo horn, his leg bells, his conch shell, his footprints, his places of pastime such as Vrindavan, his favorite plant Tulsi, his devotees, the periodic occasions for remembering him such as Ekadasi, as well as his transcendental qualities and his uncommon activities. So all those are stimulants.
No, I understand, but
that the flute is connected to his body, his transcendental body, as a stimulant. That's what you were looking at.
No, isn't that what you said? Isn't that
yes.
Yeah, but I thought that there was a different category with objects, but no.
Well, there's that whole. I mean, it's broken down. The buffalo horn gets its, description of why it's a stimulant. There's a breakdown of why the ankle bells are a stimulant.
No, I understand that they're stimulants, but they're not a separate category as objects?
They are separate categories. They are separate categories. But falling under the broader category of stimulants for ecstatic love and remembrance. So they are separate objects, yes.
So that's a category in itself, objects.
No. The whole thing was bunched together because there's the transcendental body of Krishna, the transcendental mind, and the transcendental speech of Lord Krishna. So obviously those things that are used to ornament his body would fall into the category of stimulants related to his transcendental body.
I thought in the first wave of the Southern Division that it brought in this object category.
Yes, I didn't see that in Nectar of Devotion. Maybe in, I didn't reference the Waves of Devotion book. Maybe there is some finer breakdown. I don't know. This was just how it was presented in Nectar of Devotion.
Another question, Krishna's form is eternal. It never changes, but yet it does go through changes. Right? So there's transcendental contradiction there, I guess.
That's a very nice point. Yes.
But then it gets to a certain point, and then it stops changing. What age is that?
16.
At 16. So even when he's on the battlefield of Kurukshetra, he's still got that 16-year-old appearance.
Yes, but I guess the changes in the the very many different times that he's appearing. So that's changed within one appearance, but it's the same body. But that same body is present at a different time in a different place. So the transcendental body is always the same. So,
but it will go through those same changes in a different time and different place. Yeah.
But it's the same body, yes. Yeah, it's the change is so subtle of Krishna's body, if we're looking at change, that apparently even if something very soft touches his body, the color changes.
Say it one more time.
The change of Krishna's body, since we're looking at this idea of change, is such that even if something very soft touches Krishna's body, his hue, his color changes. So there's a responsiveness that, I mean, we talk about change, but it's a kind of responsiveness is so, what's the word, fine. It's a very fine responsiveness. Something very soft touches, the hue changes.
But these are all part of this stimulates the love of his devotees, right? I mean, all these different bodily changes and that responsiveness. One other question that occurred to me, the descriptions of the acharyas are so deep and so detailed and so profound. Do they hear his flute? I mean, you know, when you look at the, what is it, the book that describes what personalities are in Gaur Lila and what they are in Krishna Lila, and all the acharyas were in our line, our manjaris. I mean, look at the list. And so, in their spiritual bodies, that's what they do. They're very enlivened by hearing Krishna's flute. But they write with such detail and such like profundity, such realization. It's like probably in their samadhi-like consciousness, they're hearing the flute.
And it's equivalent to be meditating on Krishna blowing the flute, because that's what's giving such great love, I mean, enhancing the love of the devotees. It's a constant meditation, even Krishna blowing the flute. So even though they're not hearing maybe the flute constantly, I mean, they hear it when Krishna plays it, still their meditation is on him blowing the flute.
Right. I mean, just like the exchanges that Sanat Goswami had with Madan Mohan, you know, it's like these transcendental ecstasies come alive with the acharyas. So I'm assuming that that would be the case with these acharyas that are giving such detailed descriptions of the flute with in such a loving mood, you know, that they're actually experiencing that.
Yes, the separation is not there because they're unified in their relationship with Krishna. So what's that description of Srimati Radharani coming to put an umbrella over one of the acharya's heads because he was chanting out in the hot sun. So there's that, or another time of Srimati Radharani losing her bangle. One of our acharyas is finding it. So there's not that separation. So I think that was the emphasis, that there's this complete oneness with Krishna. So they're part of the whole, what's the word, enactment of pastime. They're actually part of it, although they may be present on the banks of Radhakund.
I mean, look at also Srila Prabhupada, after he had his second heart attack and he wasn't sure whether he would live, and then Krishna comes to him, and the Srila Prabhupada Lilamrita is described in his multifarious forms. I think he was rowing the boat or something, doing something along those lines. But then also, then this was conveyed by some of the senior disciples of Srila Prabhupada that had this kind of access to his intimate thoughts, And once Prabhupada revealed that when he was at Radha Damodar, Rupa Goswami came into the room and he said, Swamiji, just go to the West and preach. Don't worry about anything. I'll be right there with you. So those kind of like transcendental episodes seems like it's a fairly commonplace thing, you know, for the acharyas, and that's how they can write with such clarity and such devotion about this. I mean, you know, in India, there's the whole Hindu, you know, the attempts by the British invaders to denigrate Hinduism, you know, because it's you know, even when I was a temple president in Denver, some of the most devout congregational members would refer to Hindu mythology. You know, so that's how I became, you know, so it's like in India, it's, even though people will watch the cartoon show Mahabharata, you know, they got millions of people watching it, but they don't really, many of them don't really believe it. It's just kind of like fairy tales. So that's a tendency, you know, on a neophyte level, to say, well, what is all this anyway? You know, I know one devotee that I know him when he was a new bhakti. He was very sincere, but then later in life, he just started getting all these doubts, you know, about this. But the point is that as one comes to the Baba platform, then these actually becomes more and more realizable, you know, and one actually experiences these ecstasies. That's why we're hearing about it. You know, we've got this is the goal, you know, come to that platform that the acharyas obviously have achieved. And that's how they can describe. That's why there's so much ecstasy in reading Prabhupada's books, because of the depth of realization that he had. And that's actually what makes it potent. You know, it's not like, you know, the Bhagavat Saptahawalas, you know, who are doing it for money and maintaining their families. You know, they talk all about their conjugal pastimes, but there's no potency there. Because that realization hasn't awoken in them.
Yeah, I mean, the absorption in the chanting of Krishna's holy name is the pivotal thing for being able to access the pastimes.
Would you start that statement? I couldn't hear the first part.
I said the chanting of the holy name of Krishna is pivotal to being able to access the pastimes. So there has to be a taking up of the process that is already separating out a person from a common person, because one is getting attracted to Krishna and performing sadhana practices. Yeah. So that is what would separate the persons that truly are just in the fallible category and completely absorbed in materialism versus the person who's qualifying themselves to enter into that unified relationship with Lord Krishna.
Yeah. I mean, I can't remember the reference, but I know I've seen it fairly recently, that by studying Srimad Bhagavatam and making spiritual advancement, you actually enter into the pastimes that you're reading. You know, this is the kind of like the mood that opens up, you know, when we become advanced in Krishna consciousness. Do you have the reference? Okay. Let me know when you find it.
Yeah.
It's a good one, but this is what, you know, which is so alive with the acharyas, and that's how they can write. They can just become so dedicated and they just give everything. And then all these detailed descriptions, you know, the commentaries, it's just like, where'd that come from? Because it's there, right there.
Well, sometimes one has the experience of hearing even one of our sannyasis in ISKCON give little details that one may not have read.
Oh, say again?
Sometimes one hears a sannyasi in our ISKCON movement give some little detail that one may not have read. So one realizes there's, something's been revealed personally to that individual in their devotional relationship with Lord Krishna. So, yeah, it's opened up the world, the spiritual world is opened up to the sadhaka. Yeah, it's a very beautiful process, and it's such a great blessing to have the writings of the acharyas that can augment one's enthusiasm to read the pastimes and get increasingly more absorbed in thought of those pastimes. Thank you very much for your contribution to Namaste Prabhu. So, I don't know if anybody has any other thoughts. Thank you very much for your kind attention to the Prabhupada Ki Jai, Srimad Bhagavatam Ki Jai.